Hi, everybody. Welcome to Create a World. I'm going to start the conversation today. Sorry, there we go. Okay, I'm going to start the conversation today. I was having to do some adjustment between Create a World and the Zoom link that we're on, so that's all settled. What we're going to do today is simply introduce ourselves. You know, when I was little, I was born May 28th, 1946. My name was not Tantramat. My name was actually Diane Muriel Spoden. Tantramat happened in many, many, many years later when I swam with a wild dolphin named Fungi and really resisted for 4 years changing my name. And now I'm grateful I did. But when I was a little girl, I kept saying something's wrong here. Obviously, a lot of us could agree with that. But what I didn't realize is that there were a bunch of us that seemed to come with new models in our head. That maybe when I was born, I carried like a Renaissance mind, not like the old one, but like whatever the new one would be. But I didn't know that over the years. I'm 76. That's a lot of years. I started working when I was 19, doing what I do now. My profession is a seer, a mystic, a facilitator of consciousness, and a prophetess. And once upon a time, those are pretty kick-butt professions. And I hold true to that. I hold true to that profession and its culture. And I mature it. And I take care of those of us in that culture so we can take our correct place in society and be of benefit and contribute. So Create a World came on a long string of events of how I pay attention. The interesting thing is I can't take you through my history. So I can promise you, and there are people on this call that could agree and let you know it's true, that several new models of consciousness have been rising that don't really in any way have anything to do with what we've been living in for thousands and thousands of years. New ways of thinking, new ways of doing, new ways of being, new ways of learning, new ways of being well, new ways of being healthy, new ways of many, many, many things. And we're just in this moment where something happened a couple of years ago, and this Create a World showed up on our docket. And it started out as me being the host, and I did a few things. And then we realized we needed to remodel it. And we remodeled it into collaboration, which I'll introduce you to Janice in just a moment. And then after that, as collaborators, we realized that there was a way we wanted to be here. We wanted to be here as people. Believe it or not, we're people, no matter what anybody says. And there were people that had really found ourselves exploring and in ways that we've been new and we've been learning and we've been experiencing, and we've had biological shifts and mental shifts and emotional shifts. And the only thing we could figure to do is just take it out and talk it. And just take it out and talk it, just like the old school, just like sitting on the fire, just like the talking stick, just like communities who have oral history so that they don't forget the lineage of what brought them to that moment in time. So I'm still working. I'm still a mystic, a seer, a prophetess, and a facilitator of consciousness. I'm now specialized into a couple of areas that I'm at work on in my tradition and my culture. And the people you see on the screen with me and the people you'll see newly on other screens on our beginning of what Janice will talk about. We just came to be in your company. Thank you. Janice.
So, hello, everybody. I'm so very happy to be with you here today. So, as I was starting to think about how I would introduce myself to you, to the Create a World community, and describe what I'm here on behalf of, a song popped into my head, and it was the song I Believe in Miracles Since You Came Along, You Sexy Thing. And I thought, wow. But I realized that it was actually very appropriate because the truth is that nothing turns me on like the power of possibility. And humanity to me is infinite possibility. Um, I am a lover of humanity. I'm not always a big fan of people, but I am a lover of humanity. And I recognize and acknowledge that there's tremendous bravery on the part of all of us who show up day after day after day to do this thing that we call life. Um, and I cherish our ability to use this innate curiosity that is absolutely fundamental to who we are as humans to be co-creators of new realities. Um, all the things that humans can generate just boggle my mind. Some great, some that I love, some that I'm not such a fan of, but our power to create is inarguable. And so it's this deep honoring and respect that brings me to create a world. Um, I am firstly and always a student, and particularly a student of the human soul and the human experience. And exploring the world with my curiosity and passion for change and love for humanity has led me on a journey to become a, a gifted teacher, a performer, a speaker, and a coach. I've spent 30 years in the school systems and also in what would be called sort of informal education settings, designing and delivering educational experiences for children, for teens, for adults. Teens are some of my favorite people to work with, by the way. I know they scare a lot of folks, but give me a snarky teen any day. Um, I I do this work because I'm motivated by my desire to uplift the world, and early on I realized that education, when done well, and that's part of what you'll hear me talk a lot during any of our times together, is to me what it looks like to do education well in a way that honors humanity's needs and original design. Um, so that when it's done well, education is a very potent way to create the world around us. I am also someone who has often challenged a lot of what's happened in conventional education systems because I believe, given how brilliant we are, we can actually we can create something that's really more nurturing and and honoring for what's vitally important to human beings thriving. I've also spent 40 years in the theater, and I've done that mostly as a performer, but also as a director and a producer. And through theater, I've stretched my own edges. I've explored the lives of other people so I can bring them to the stage. I've also recently started to do work of exploring my own life and bringing my own true stories to the stage. But through all this work, I've learned that that finding and telling those personal stories really can enrich everything else that I do. It really has brought me a lot of clarity about who I want to show up as in the work and how I want to interact with the world around me. Exploring theater has also deepened my empathy and my understanding of the human condition and my reverence for it. And I've also challenged the status quo in the theater because I feel like we have, in some ways, backed away from some of the power of theater, because I really do think that theater not only can be, but it's part of theater's original nature, of its original design, to promote human transformation. It's not just about entertainment. And so I have a real interest in restoring theater to its rightful place as a player in humanity's evolution. I generally, wherever I go, I leave no pot unstirred. That's sort of one of the things that it is to be me. And I consequently was very excited to be part of building this new collaboration. And that's a really important word to me. We currently live in a reality of separation, where we have this and we have that. We have hierarchy, we have collaboration, and we're in the midst, thank goodness, of a reality of unity being on the rise. And that's an opportunity for us, again, to step back into the most beautiful aspects of what it is to be a human being, emphasis on the being. And so as we move from more hierarchical education models, where there's a notion of one person having and dispensing the answers, what we're about here in Create a World is really moving into this notion of collaboration and exploration and conversation, and just taking it out for a spin, as it were, and seeing what's there to explore, because we each have brilliance that we can bring to the table, and the most beautiful things arise when everyone's brilliance is at play. I was on another call with Electra earlier where she talked about stone soup, and so I won't say anything in case she's gonna about stone soup, in case she's gonna bring that into her field. But it's this idea that we're all here together. We're here to support each other. We're here to question each other. We're here to explore together, and I couldn't be more thrilled. So over to you, Electra.
Thank you, Janice. I'm Electra Porzo. I'm the director of the Language of Consciousness Institute. And when you first hear those words, you go, consciousness, language, I don't get it. And I'll tell you the reference to stone soup in a minute. But I came to this after a long search, and I've worked a lot in Taoism. I looked at Aikido. I've been a trainer in organizations, and I've done a lot of spiritual searching. Done a lot of work in Native American spirituality, as well as Taoism. And I know you all have been in that same kind of search too. Like we know that each of those older systems were developed within their own history. So what a lot of us find is we take pieces from different ones that work for us. And I did that too. And I kept thinking, there's something missing. I still don't have access to something till I met Tantra. Okay. And I read her book, The Irish Tales of a Modern Mystic, I think. And I said, this woman has access to something that I don't have access to. And that was 10 years ago that I discovered her, and I discovered the tools of access. And the tools of access are the templates of the language of creation. Now, when we say the word creation, we're really talking about another name for source, God, Great Spirit. And language, we're not talking about just what comes from your brain, but the language of your body. And we call the language of your body sentient awareness. And many of us have learned some of that when we're young, right? Like, butterflies in your stomach, right? Or great elation when you see the light of sun sparkling on snow, or smell a baby's skin. So these are ways that our body communicates to our conscious mind and to our spirit, and our spirit gets to talk too. So the reason I got into this was because I got interested in Tantra, and I got interested in consciousness, but not just the consciousness of the 3D that you and I live every day, but the consciousness that we had when we were ancient peoples, the consciousness of connecting to the greater etheric realms, to the powers and forces, because there was an original design to human beings. And we were more than we are now. And there are ways to access that wisdom, access that original design, access the connections to your greater spirit, to my greater spirit. And one of the best tools I've ever discovered was, well, I didn't discover it, but I was opened up to through Tantra and through Deb, was the language of creation. And so about 6 years ago, I was offered the lead for this institute. And the institute was set up to provide a way to teach and support everybody who wanted to be able to understand that language of their own consciousness, of their higher levels of consciousness, and to be in greater connection with who they came here to be more of who they came here to be, to their original design. And that's the fascinating thing about using the language of creation templates, is they don't provide they provide a structure within which you can evolve yourself, or it's more than develop, it's more than evolve, it's like the bee. All of a sudden, everything that you want that is life enhancing and life generating and resonant with you gets called to the surface, that you pay attention to. Last night I was reading an article in a book by Falco from Dom and Her about prayer. And one of the things he said was that initiate is thankful at the beginning of the day, in the middle of work, at food, and at the end of the day. And that gratitude is an in the moment gratitude. And I was struck by the power of that, of paying attention to the moment. And I know that's what the templates do for me. And I'm really interested in having conversations with people who are on this same kind of track of being more in the moment, more conscious of who they came here to be, and more aware of this conversation that our body is having with our spirit and with the greater realms. And we're having it. I think that's the reason for this kind of conversation we're having, because the reality that you and I were born into is not the reality that will be and is coming into form. And one of the things that Janice said about education is that it has to meet the needs of the people more. Well, one of the tenets of Tantra's work is that we are each a unique and essential being. And we have that right to be supported and honored in that. And I'll just point this last night. I have a grandson who is going to a new school, and it's what they call it neurodiversive, which just means their brains work. Somebody's recognized, it's a school that's recognized that your minds work differently. And this is a kid who's had a hard time for 9 years. He's really smart, but the school system didn't fit him. And last night I bring him home from school, and he says to his mom, "I love school." And I'm going like, that's what Janice is talking about, guys. When was the last time you ever said that? When did your children say that? We want all of our kids to say, "I love school. I want everybody to be able to say, I love what I do every day. That's the gratitude of the prayer the Fackel talked about. So this whole conversation is like, how do we do that? How do we bring what we came to bring here to this earth as a gift? Every one of the women here is a gift. Your kids, your grandkids, they're all gifts to the earth, gifts to humanity. And what can we do to make that something that they can live and be, and it'll grow exponentially. And that actually comes with this reference to stone soup. If you know the story of stone soup, this guy comes into town and says, well, I'm going to make soup. And everybody says, well, you know how to do by yourself because there ain't nothing here. And so he says, well, I'm going to start with some water. Everybody have water? Yeah, we got water. We don't have anything else. We got water. And doesn't that kind of sound how people are in the world? But anyway, little bit by little bit, people had stuff in their houses, and they had carrots and they had potatoes, and they made a soup that fed the entire town. And this Create a World is a soup that will feed a new world. It'll feed your mind, it'll feed your soul. My particular specialty, along with Liz, is the templates of the language of creation and how they can help you recognize your own uniqueness and essentialness, recognize your own divinity, recognize all that you are, and help you and support you in being that. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think this is going to be the greatest conversations. And so please continue to join us. So I think that's it for now, stone soup and all. So I'm on to Liz.
I felt very fed by that story. I love stories. Love stories. I come.
Is she frozen or am I frozen? Okay, we're going to all go on, take our videos off. That's not going to work. Let's put our videos back on and
Go to Deb.
Go to Deb. She popped off. Go ahead and put your video back on, Electra.
Okay. If she pops back on.
It's all right. We'll manage it.
Yeah. So my name's Deborah Merchant, and I work as a clinical psychologist. The collaborative interest that I'm bringing to this stone soup, Electra, I love that story, is and Janice, I've worked with teens for several years now. I like them too, and they're caregivers. One of the reasons I like it is, even though they think they're coming because they think they're broken and need help and need to be fixed, and their families need to be fixed, what I see is people being moved to take action on a deep commitment to themselves and their lives. It takes a while for them to get that, because it's a very unusual idea in this modern Western world to consider that what Electra said, that you're a unique and essential aspect of creation. If I said that out loud, my teens would look at me like I had 3 heads. And takes a very long time sometimes for them to believe that they matter. One of my really big interests in collaborating and create a world is that I wonder what would life be like if human beings were defined as whole and healthy with problems in living to sort out. Even if you call that problem in living something that sounds, overwhelming and scary, like schizophrenia or, major depression or any of several things, regardless of what you call the problem in living, if we came at life like that, if we defined human nature like that, what would it be like? What would that change? How would that change human identity? How would that change society? What is actually in place right now is that humans are defined as disordered and diseased and trying to get whole and healthy. At least that's what's common in the field of psychology or mental health. And that's one of my main interests, is to shift that perception. And I'm not the only one. That's a pretty fundamental idea in the line of psychology or mental health called humanistic psychology. But everybody knows that's not a dominant idea out here in the world. That is not a dominant idea. What would life be like if it were? That's create a world. We have no idea, so we're going to be exploring that. What would that do to the idea of vitality in the world? What would that do to the human spirit? And I think that there are some cultures, I haven't studied this out a lot or anything. I certainly haven't traveled to indigenous cultures, but I really, really suspect that they do experience themselves as unique and essential aspects of creation. They do consider themselves to be part of a greater whole. And so that automatically expands human identity right there. That expands your sense of self and sense of life. And I don't even know what else, because that's not how we live in modern Western culture. So that's what I'm after, what I want to bring to this party. What is that? And I really am interested in looking at what people do in their day-to-day lives. That's an expression of the human psyche. It isn't psychology tells you, no, life tells you, but we don't look at it that way. And, in the rush of doing everything there is to do to, get my degree and get all my supervised hours and all that stuff, there's not a lot of time to slow down and think about exactly what that is. And in the crisis nature of some of my client work, it's not easy to slow down and take a look at that. How is life informing your psyche? I mean, or showing, that's what I mean, is showing your psyche. How is that? As opposed to, we tell you because of what we're seeing. And I think that's a piece of personal agency that's vital to regain. Really, really vital to regain. So, and I've worked, what else do I want to say? I think I've only just begun being able to use what Electra's talking about with the templates in the work. And so far, it sort of occurs as a strange idea inside the field of psychology. And yet there's all kinds of ways people have used narrative therapy, telling your story and changing your story. There's all kinds of ways that that's been made available, but there's a huge amount that comes from the templates of, like Electra was saying, getting all the way back to some unnameable connection point. At least I haven't found the words for it, really. And it looks, to use the templates looks so simple that a lot of people at first say, oh, I know that, and they move to something else. But what I think is really true is they don't know how to engage with something that intuitively will bring them back to that spark of human essence that, I agree with Electra's terminology, that original nature of human being, that original nature which knows human being as divine, as plain old human being paying the bills and making bread or whatever we do. Knows us as wise, knows us as needing each other, inseparable from each other. Those are aspects of our original nature that I'm interested in exploring and bringing what I'm learning, what I get exposed to, what I go figure out and discover. That's what I'm interested in bringing to this party. To the point, not like I've got answers, but what I've been aware of. Not because that's a huge part of my work as a clinician, the style of clinician that I am, is to help people activate their wisdom. The kids activate their wisdom. And I have 2 clients right now that are making choices. They're good choices. They're just not what I would think was the right choice. And they're flourishing. So those are the interesting moments where I have to notice, okay, this is kind of where I'm being a mother hen, and I think I know the answer. And then here they come and they know their own answer. And in both those cases I'm thinking of, they're choosing things that are kind of opposite. Now, how often does that have with your actual kids? Pretty often, if you're parents of kids. But I have not been able to successfully impart to them how glorious that is. They're making these choices for themselves out of their own inner knowing, their own wisdom, and out of the world they've created for themselves. Now, because of all of that, they're dealing with what they're dealing with, and they think it's just theirs. They don't see how their choices changes the interconnection with, let's say, their parent. But I'm hoping one day they will. And what would that be to change the practice of mental health or psychology so that that was part of it, that they saw their inner relationships and how their beauty and wisdom emanates out into the world. So there's a lot of things that I'm really intent on exploring and sharing, but not from I've got the answers, but from as I discover and collaborate or observe and bring forth to you all, then that sparks something in you. Then that sparks something over here. And then we have choices of action, and something new will start to rise. And it could take time, so it may or may not be quick. So this whole process of create a world could require a lot of patience. Patience just means keep going and don't quit. Patience doesn't mean sit there and passively take what the world throws at you. But I think the last thing I want to share about what I've been noticing about Create a World so far is to tell a story. Way back in some of the earlier days when I knew Tantra and we were working together, she would lead workshops that she called Create a World. And we had people, and we had everything in our living room. Our living room looked like a living room. And she would say, okay, the workshop is about use anything and everything in the room and create a world. Go. That would be part of the instruction. In the first ones, for a while, people would stand there. It literally did not compute. And nobody knew how to take the first move. And it was an amazing process that after, I don't know, not a huge number, but it took several times of running this workshop before people started to move more quickly, and they would spark and get excited. And so, so the couch would be upended, or you put something here, you just move anything anywhere. It had nothing to do with like rearrange the living room. It meant create a world. And the interesting part about how I look at things is identity and the 100th monkey kind of syndrome, because it wasn't the same people in the workshop when people were moving quickly, fluidly, and with excitement to create a world, as in the beginning when people were absolutely jammed and couldn't move. But it didn't take but I don't know, I'm going to guess 10, let's say 10. So 10 workshops, not the same people here as here, and something had changed in consciousness. Same living room, same me and Tantra. So I suppose those things were common, but it's an absolutely fascinating phenomenon of how the idea of create a world shifts, and it shifts the world we live in, and how it always shifts into what's life enhancing. Not even one time did it shift into fights or arguments or discord of any kind. And everybody at the end was satisfied with the result. So that's what I see us as exploring, what I'm paying attention to, that I'm bringing to the party for Create a World. And I'm looking forward to a whole bunch of exciting engagements.
I have to add something to what Deb said. I can't resist, because the piece she left out is we would, how when you lay in another person's tummy and you start to laugh and the other person, you can't stop laughing. We would go into hysterics sometimes. There was no reason. We would just be in ecstasy. We would be so elated. And there was this feeling that there was something about us having say about how our world looked that, like it really was a sideways sofa, and one little something that somebody moved would set everybody off. We just have to stop and laugh because it was just gorgeous, but met no standards of what human beings have been told to do. I just had to add. Thanks for adding that, Deb. Over to you, Janice.
So I just want to share with you a little bit what we're up to and what you can expect as you join us from week to week, and talk a little bit about sort of the first round of conversations that we'll be having. So Creative World's going to really be focused around 7-week series. And in the first week of the series, you'll see all of us together, and we'll be kicking off a conversation. And then for the next 5 weeks, you may see one or more of us taking a deeper dive into a particular conversation that will usually integrate our areas of interest where we're paying attention, as well as sort of the general ideas that we're exploring in Creative World. And then we'll come back in the 7th week and we'll do a wrap up where we'll talk about what's happened for us as we've done our exploration. And again, I really want to reinforce that this is us just being curious. We are not coming to you with answers. If anything, we will come to you with questions, and we will invite you to live into the questions, because that is really, that's where the bliss is, right? So as we explore, there are some foundational principles that we will be discussing, and I want to take a moment and share those with you. And Tantra, if you want to elaborate on that after I do, please feel free. So in these worlds that we're creating, we have some tenets that guide our work. And one of them is that in a reality of unity, in this new world that we're creating, everything operates on behalf of everything else. And everything is moving to the next greater whole. Everything is part of everything else. And everything has a place. Everything operates on behalf of life and has us exist as whole. And everything is in relationship with everything else. So I hope that you can hear in that this notion of weaving, which is very different than to take any given thing and declare it right or wrong or good or bad. What we're really talking about is bringing the totality of existence into our existence. And that is a very different way to be, but it is a way that that can offer us more than we may have thought possible. So Tandra, do you want to say anything more about that before I talk about?
Yeah, I do. Let me shift. I had a little teeny dog that was forcing me to torque my body in a way I don't have to now. So I'm just taking a minute. A couple of things. It's might feel strange that we are going to be talking heads on a screen. That may feel strange, but we really looked at this, and there needs to be a freedom of the people observing us, observing being a key phrase, that they aren't challenged by dialogue. In other words, trying to figure something out by talking to us about it. That really, it's really constructed to keep you in your own inquiry, to keep you curious, to even keep you opinionated. Because sometimes I had something happen yesterday that really stunned me, and I didn't even know I had an opinion about it until it occurred. So you could say we're massaging the psyche of human being. We're after human beings getting to come alive again in themselves. We will be discussing our thoughts and what we're curious about, we're observing, but it isn't to solve a problem. It's to flex the muscle of thinking, to flex the muscle of thought, to flex the muscle of your own life. Because but I've watched this so carefully. People go to lots of audios, listen to lots of things. Compared to their having to think themselves about their own life is almost 99-1. So this is a different kind of medium, because you're just eavesdropping. You're eavesdropping. And then if you have interest in dialogue, we have the template parties at the Language of Consciousness, we have the World of Unity and the Field of Tantra Mat, other people that are part of our collaboration. They'll have areas for you to come and talk with them. We don't know. We honestly don't know. We are starting with this. Not to impose something on reality, but to give reality a chance, just to give it a chance and see what starts to happen. Also, I want you to know that I think the whole city, the whole block that Liz is on just lost its electricity. So she won't be back with us until they get the electricity back on. And she says hi. So there you are. Over to you, Janice.
So we are going to have a sort of a more specific focus in each of the 7 weeks series that we are exploring. And for this first one, what we are really looking at is all of the systems that are going out of existence and the systems that are on the rise. So you'll hear us talk a lot about things in pairs. So rather than either or, we talk about both and so we'll talk about as something is going out of existence, it means something else is coming into existence. As something is deconstructing, something's instructing. As something is devolving, something is evolving. And so we're going to be talking about all of the systems, and because we know as we look around in our world right now, all these things that we used to assume were set in stone, well, the stone is crumbling beneath our feet. And that can cause a lot of panic, but it can also be really good news because we know there's so much of reality right now that is, again, not serving humanity in the fullness of what we're really designed to be, in a way that we can stand in joy and creativity and thriving. But while the stone is crumbling beneath our feet, we're going to need to find some things to hold on to and keep ourselves steady as the new foundation comes into being. And so that's what we'll be exploring here in these first 7 weeks.
All right, I have more to add. I've often been accused of always having to have the last word. I'll try not to make it real, but so far there is a legacy I can't seem to throw about it. I want to add one more thing. We are in your company and you are in ours. And we are literally, like today, it's such a thrown way to talk about what we do and what we provide and what we're at work about. But really, we got to get to be folks again, all of us. So, and I love that some of the most fun YouTubes that people watch are people watching their pets do tricks, or two women that are biking across the United States of America. So we just want to be folks about things that are up. We want to be folks about things that are up. Genesis referred to community. It's a work in progress. We found this really nice, I don't know what you call it, thing called heartbeat. Because if you're going to create a world, you have to have ways for people to find each other, but on their own. Very distinct from talking about the last fad, and you can go there as your individual self to see that. But we just want to see if people start being in each other's company, because we don't know. As Deb said, evolution can be very slow, or like that day of Create a World. Boy, will I never forget that day. It was actually in our swimming pool. We brought our swimming pool house, every makeshift thing you could find. It was so crowded you couldn't move. And it was stunning. We invited everybody that had ever done Create a World to come. It was stunning. And the thing that Deb didn't mention, because she was in a long list of things, is how conscious we felt for no good reason. So that's kind of how we're playing around. And we want in ourselves to be evolving. So us being on the hot seat, so to speak, and playing around with this thing, heartbeat, and playing around with talking together is part of our own evolutionary patterning. It's really, we are committed to ourself. The other tenet is a unity of who we are with ourselves, who we are with others, and who we are with life, and who we are with the greater whole of which we're a part. That's the other thing we're paying attention to. And sometimes what'll happen in the period of time between the two meetings, this meeting, is we'll invite people on that seem to be curious about something that isn't in existence yet, isn't there yet. And we'll chat. We'll just chat and see what happens. And the last thing I want to say is an interesting thing in science that's very proved now. It's called mirror neurons. The downside of mirror neurons, and if people are in an environment they can't get out of, they start to mirror the environment without any understanding that they're now operating in a way that's counterproductive to who they are. The high side of mirror neuroning, as curious as we all get, we start to mirror something we don't even know yet is coming into existence. That's the high side of mirror neuroning. And that's what we're doing here. And we're doing our best. And you have any thoughts or suggestions right now, you can write createaworldprogram@gmail.com. createaworldprogram@gmail.com. If it bounces, just add an S on programs. I can't remember. And then, we take it from there. I just want to go around and any last minute words. The one thing I want to say about Deb, because we can now talk about each other. The one thing I say about Deb is what she left out is she actually wrote a dissertation on the creation exercises. So she is actually, this is part of this new thing rising. That isn't it interesting? She didn't mention that. Like it goes into our template of, oh, I just did that. But the truth is that acceptance of her dissertation made the creation templates a legal tool in psychology. So when she was commenting on, just beginning to introduce them, it's actually, she's a clinician and she now can. She's going to comment now.
I can now do the research to make it have evidentiary status, but that still is the next. So, but that's coming. And actually, I didn't mention the dissertation because it lives as, oh, that's just something I did. It's more like choosing what to say now, what to say. But the dissertation, because you have to have some kind of focus. Before I do that, I want to go back to something you said when you're talking about us coming together, Tandra, and what everything you just said. I want to address that can include sometimes asking hard questions or having hard conversations, because the model of that in modern Western society is us versus them, discord, fighting, oppositional stances. What if we had models of people who could sit and be in each other's company, asking hard questions? I mean, wrenchingly hard questions, even that where there was no polarization of us versus them. There might not even be any resolution of anything, but to be in each other's company, being with whatever was being talked about. And then you never know. Sometimes, a month from now, it might look completely unconnected, and poof, here comes the first steps of a resolution, for example, or the conversation itself sparks something in one or of the other participants in that conversation, and they begin to shift in a life enhancing way. I mean, there's just so much that's rich that we're going to play with.
Thank you, Deb.
Yeah. So in the dissertation part, doesn't matter right now. I will be back to it because that was the place that I brought into a professional realm ideas and research regarding how traumatic experience impacts identity, and a tool to restore one's identity back to even better than it was before, which is kind of a gardening thing of wherever I live, I leave the soil better than when I arrived at. And so that's the long and short of the dissertation.
Thank you, Deb. We have 4 minutes. Last comments. Electra.
What has struck me is the phrase that we talk about a lot, which is with another in the field. And that's what this is, that we can always strive individually to be the best that we can, but until we engage with others actively, we don't have the power behind us to make the shifts that we want to make. And it's in this kind of communication with each other, with you, through the template wisdom gatherings, through the communities that we're trying to develop, where we can all support each other to become who we came here to be. So that's what we're after.
Yeah, and it also isn't our community, it's your community. You never have to come to a wisdom gathering. You never have to come to the World of Unity. We're not advertising. We're just telling you, if you want to come chat, we got some places. But you may find that you can take on having your own group, maybe some considerations of what was in your way. You'll be like us with butterflies in our stomachs and wondering how we did, and no one gonna have to look at the video after just to see how we are on screen, all that stuff, it could be fun. Over to you, Janice, to close. Okay.
Yep. So I'm gonna steal a phrase from Oprah's magazine, and she often will end with what I know for sure. And so what I know for sure, after more than a decade of hanging out in the company of these fabulous women and the field of Tantra Mat, is that when you are in their company, you will be moved, emotionally moved, and you will be moved. So if you come and spend time with us, I know for sure that you will be moved and you will be moved.